Raiden Versio. Inferno Squad. Commander Versio. You must be important. Look at me.
In November 2017, Electronic Arts probably couldn't have caused more controversy if their CEO had posted a video of himself bumming a panda while wearing a t-shirt that said "Pay women less." The furore surrounding this game before its release was incredible, with the public and politicians across the world coughing up their spleens at what was branded by some a cynical online gambling den for children. Disney's top brass got involved, demanding answers as to why the company's marquee brand was being dragged through the mud like a Tuscan raider with his foot caught in the stirrups of a rabid bantha. What happened? What changed? And what's next? Let's take a look.
The Empire's time has come. You don't have to go down with it.
You're right. The Empire's time has come.
We've been alerted to an elite rebel cell operating out of Mos Eisley. They know we're coming. Rebel Alliance forces are helping them evacuate, so expect heavy resistance.
As the preview builds for Battlefront II were making their way to the gaming media, and in turn the public, two little words would come to haunt the developers forever. Loot boxes. The idea seems innocuous enough at first glance. Players work their way through the game, earning XP that will eventually allow them to afford new characters, skills and weapons. Save up and use that XP to crack open a virtual box containing your goodies. So far, so what? But then it all starts to get a bit Dagobah. Why spend all the time grinding for the better stuff when you could just throw Uncle EA a few more coins and have everything now? Cue internet meltdown. Real world money on top of a full price game to access the best stuff immediately and gain an advantage over those who won't or can't stump up the extra cash. What's more, because many of the rewards contained within the loot boxes were random, it led to accusations that the game was promoting gambling by encouraging people to spend more money in the hope, but with no guarantee, of getting something even better on the next occasion. An attempt to defend the game's progression model by one of the developers is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most downvoted comment on Reddit of all time, while authorities in the US, Australia and Belgium all signalled that they were prepared to take legal action against the game and its publisher in some form, albeit with fairly limited insight into what they were legislating against, one imagines. Backs against the wall, butt cheeks stinging from the righteous lash of the public's lightsaber, EA had no choice but to remove all real money transactions from day one and drastically alter several key aspects of the game's structure. And while microtransactions did eventually reappear in the game once the dust had settled, these were purely for optional cosmetic enhancements that did nothing to empower any one character over another. Whether you agreed with the strength of the Fallout or not, it was a warning that got developers across the world thinking carefully about how to ask people for more money. It was also arguably the start of what has become a regular internet phenomenon, the grovelling backtrack and subsequent charm offensive / butt-kissing marathon. Battlefield 2042.
At CD Projekt Red, we dedicate ourselves to telling immersive stories.
Cyberpunk 2077.
We set out to make our games bigger, more complex, deeply engaging.
You are still a frog in a well who knows nothing of the sea.
And more recently, Assassin's Creed Shadows. They're just a few examples of games that have royally pissed off mouse bandits for various reasons relating to content, performance or cultural sensitivities, provoking lengthy written apologies, the promise of free content updates and handjobs for all if you just kindly stop complaining. Just joking, of course. The apologies aren't usually that lengthy. Whether the developers feel the criticism is justified or not doesn't really matter, as the shadow of their publisher looms over them, snatching away vital dollars with every dislike on YouTube. Cyberpunk was a particularly egregious example, launching in a shoddy state across the consoles in particular, but at the same time it's also probably the standout example in the games industry of what can happen when developers really want to make good on their promises, and when we as consumers have the patience to forgive and move on, and buy a PS5. Star Wars Battlefront II wasn't anything like that kind of technical mess, of course, but the damage had been done, and at the very least the budget needed to be recouped. To their credit, what followed from the Battlefront developers over the next 3 years or so was a genuine push to introduce a variety of free, meaningful content, featuring new ways to play alongside a slew of the customary bug fixes and stability patches. Even today, you can still easily jump into a game with a full lobby across a number of different modes, and it all looks and plays great. For simple arcade thrills when you haven't got time for anything else, the PvE deathmatches and dogfights are probably as close as we've yet come in the digital world to tipping our Star Wars toys out on the floor and running around the room with them. But it isn't perfect. Battlefront 2 is now 7 years old, and a lot of the modes are quite tired. Surely there are few other licenses in all of media that have Star Wars' potential for epic scale action, and there has to be meetings going on somewhere about what to do next. With a margin of error somewhere in the very low millions, the rebooted Battlefront games have reportedly sold around 33 million copies since 2015. That would normally be much more than enough to have any publisher frothing at the pants and demanding a sequel from their developer. But Battlefront III, as we've all noticed, is nowhere to be seen, and strangely, we've been here before. The original two Battlefront games, all the way back on the PS2 and the original Xbox, were also huge hits, and British developer Free Radical Design have always claimed that they had a third game just about ready and waiting to go sometime in the late noughties. Except, according to LucasArts, they didn't. Or if they did, it wasn't shaping up to be that great. There's a somewhat agitated back and forth you can read between the two parties, which came to a head again in several articles in early 2023. But all you really need to know is that there never was a third game released, and for some reason there still isn't now. But giant piles of smart money says that there will be another game at some point, and it's increasingly likely to be another reboot given the passage of time and the changing ownership of the license. So, what do we, as the players and payers, want from a new Battlefront game?
How many like you have I slain?
Grenade deployed.
There's no doubt that sometimes all we want to do is shoot stuff, whether that be our fellow man from somewhere across the world online or hapless AI bots, depending on how aggressive we're feeling or how many controllers have been thrown out of the window of late. Metaphorically speaking, Team Deathmatch is the Twix to our lonely fat bastard and should always be a comforting option to fall back on. But the other options need work. Seamlessly combining ground and space combat around a tactical framework is a promise that has never been kept. Star Wars is a big universe and it needs big modes, not just endless rehashes of domination and hardpoint. In all fairness to DICE and EA, they have tried several different approaches with Battlefront 2, from asymmetric experiments with Ewoks versus Stormtroopers in the dark, to progressive, objective-based modes that keep pushing you forward through levels. I think the hero characters were quite well implemented as well, and the dedicated modes for Jedi, Sith and Bounty Hunters were a nice change of pace. I'd really like to see more innovation in the large-scale modes, building on the turn-based galactic conquest that was introduced way back in the original Battlefront. If you've never seen that, it was a kind of Risk-style board game approach, where you had to take over the galaxy planet by planet via battles on the ground and in space. Imagine if each team could take turns to vote for the planet they wanted to attack next, with each location offering a different bonus or problem to overcome. Maybe some maps have more vehicles for your team but allow fewer respawns, or the other way around. Maybe each individual player could decide how many of a finite number of respawns and vehicles they want to take into the action out of a starting pool of so many, depending on what the rest of their team is doing and how much they're willing to sacrifice to take a planet. The opposing team might have no idea how many resources you're about to throw into a battle, so it's a gamble as to whether everyone has assigned enough men and firepower. I'm just thinking out loud here, I don't actually know if that would work or not. But make the objectives consequential, not just flags or pillars of light. Taking a hangar could mean more vehicles for your team. Taking an arms depot could mean better weapons. Taking a clone factory could mean more respawns. What will your team prioritise? Which leads me on to my next point. One thing first-person shooters are notoriously poor at is incentivizing teamwork. It's often far too easy to bugger off on your own, unaware or disinterested that there's an objective you're supposed to secure. A lot of that might be down to trying to communicate with complete strangers, unless you're in a private party, but I think the biggest problem is how these games only ever reward kills. Where's the recognition for those guys who hunker down behind those crates to make sure you ultimately win the round, getting smashed from all sides by laser fire while the rest of the team sits on their ass with sniper rifles a mile away? They never get any bonuses, or very little that's tangible in the midst of a game. Give the people in those scoring zones at least the same benefits as those who do nothing but pull a trigger. Star Wars has some of the best vehicles in all of pop culture, but the Battlefront maps to date have rarely made any effective use of them. Understandably, when DICE took the reins of development in the mid-2010s, they didn't simply want to slap Star Wars stickers on Battlefield and serve up exactly the same game. Thing is, they had a lot right with the vehicles in Battlefield, and while some of them could be a bit tricky to control, all of them served a purpose for attacking, defending, or as simple transport. What if a Battlefront mode had you escorting a VIP from the planet's surface onto a shuttle, then you need to escort or attack that shuttle as it makes its way seamlessly to a large freighter or star destroyer waiting on orbit? Meanwhile, someone transports troops in a carrier ahead of the VIP to start clearing out enemies. At the same time, some players can stick with attacking or defending planet or starship-based objectives, while the others take to the skies to help or hinder the VIP. The winning team could be the one that secures the most objectives, say 3 out of 5 when the time's up, but you get proper worthwhile bonuses if you take everything during a round, not just a dribble of XP that edges you towards a crap hat. We've seen hints of this kind of game mode in the past, but now the developers have the grunt with the modern consoles and PCs to go further. Again, I'm just spitballing here, it's not all going to be gold, but we need to see something to freshen this genre up. It's well overdue, to be honest.
It's not gonna work. There's no room for us.
And finally, whatever happens next, the developers should definitely not neglect the player versus AI modes. They're a great relief from the often stressful online engagements, and being able to tackle any map at any difficulty with any character, especially in the Star Wars universe, is a lot of fun. Again, these are modes that are still being played today in Battlefront II, and given the game's massively reduced price these days, you should definitely check it out if you're a Star Wars fan who stayed away initially.
The Rebel Alliance thought it could hide on Hoth, but no one can escape the Empire's reach.
So, what do we reckon, guys? How do you see the future of Battlefront panning out? Can you ever see beyond more of the same play-it-safe modes for this license? Do you think it's time to move on from the format altogether and stick with the kind of narrative-driven adventures we see in Star Wars Outlaws or Respawn's recent Jedi games? Let us know in the comments below. One way or the other, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification thing, do some star jumps, go to the pub, very important. And I'll be back with more news, reviews and recommendations very soon. Cheers for now.
The AT-AT will move directly toward our base. I want it intercepted before it arrives. Use the rebels' tactics against them. Arm with rockets and fire on the walker.